Now, inside the sex offenders' prison, the filmmaker Rex Bloomstein, who pioneered the prison television documentary in this country, investigates how sex offenders are rehabilitated in the prison service. And with never-before access, he hears from a range of inmates undergoing treatment programmes.
Birdsong is not a sound I associate with one of Her Majesty's prisons, but that is where I am. And then again, HMP Whatton in Nottinghamshire is no ordinary jail. In fact, it's the largest prison in Europe for sex offenders. They're kept in mostly two-storey sandstone buildings with names like Alpha, Bravo, Charlie units. There are landscape gardens and more space than you would imagine. It feels to me like an industrial estate, but of course it's not. We're out into the grounds of the prison. High fences with razor wire on top of them and cameras, as you will see in most modern prisons. The day is grey and dank. Everywhere is locked, unlocked. HMP Whatton is very different from the Victorian jails that I've filmed in. The corridors are narrower, pale colours. It doesn't have that traditional sense of the jails that we've all grown up with and see occasionally. Built in the 1960s, Whatton houses 841 adult male sex offenders. I'm told that it's known locally as the Pedo Palace. But this is in fact a treatment prison, and for the first time ever, I've been given unprecedented access to find out what is being done here to rehabilitate some of the most despised and feared people in our society. And since the revelations surrounding such high-profile figures, such as Jimmy Savile, Rolf Harris, Max Clifford, which have sent a shockwave through this country, there are more sex offenders in our prison system than ever before. 11,000 out of a total prison population of nearly 86,000.
And we're just on our way to the A units, and we'll look at the induction unit when we get there. So, yeah. Good morning.
The governor of HMP Whatton is Lynn Saunders, who is showing me around. When was Whatton built?
Whatton was built in 1966. This is the old part of the prison. Most of our group work takes place on this wing. You see that
the personality of the governor is vital to the running of any prison, but I feel it's especially important here. I'm struck by how approachable she is, how she goes out of her way to meet and greet inmates, to listen to their concerns.
Hiya.
Lynn takes me into the induction wing, where every prisoner arriving here begins their journey through Whatton. I meet a variety of men. Do you know what's happened? Have you gone through induction?
I'm going through it at the moment, yeah.
So they're explaining to you what the prison's about, yeah? Later, I discover one is a former Roman Catholic choirmaster. Another has learning difficulties.
I was in a nuns prisoner up until May, right?
Yeah.
Lynn also has to respond to a prisoner who is particularly irate and even threatening.
I will break every rule in this prison now to what you've done to me in the last 9 weeks, yeah?
I understand that. I think the difficulty we've got is that we can't get other prisons to take you at the moment.
But this confrontation proves to be the only time that I will see such anger and frustration during my visit.
No, because of him.
Whatton, on the surface, seems generally calm and ordered.
Because he's been noisy.
Lynn tells me that 70% of the men here in Whatton have been convicted for sexual offences against children. The rest are for offences against adults.
This gentleman, he wants to move to another prison.
Around half are on determinate sentences. They know their release date. The rest do not. The overwhelming majority have accepted their crimes and are working to address them.
Whatton's a great leveller. We've got everybody you could imagine, every kind of profession you can imagine. We've got people with learning disabilities who have low IQ and complex mental health problems. We've got everybody you can imagine.
Such as?
Vicars, teachers, airline pilots, police officers, prison officers, doctors, you name it really. We've had them at some point.
So no part of society is not represented in this prison?
I don't think so. I think it's really interesting. Unlike many areas of life currently, it doesn't matter where you went to school, what your dad does, how much money you've got, whether you're a millionaire or not, whether you're poor, whether you're on benefits, it doesn't matter, because when you're here, everybody's the same.
What's the age range here?
Very large age range, from someone who is 21. The oldest prisoner we've ever had since I've been here was 93. I think the oldest prisoner we've got at the moment is 82.
Lynn goes on to tell me about the wide range of offences that prisoners have committed. They include what's known as contact offences: touching, penetrative sex, incest, sexually related violence, or even murder. Then there are non-contact offences, for instance downloading illegal sexualised images of children. Whatton offers more sex offender treatment programmes in one place than any other prison in the country, to treat men who've committed these crimes. Dave Potter is one of the prison's most experienced facilitators of these programmes.
The basic premise is you get a bunch of guys in a room over a series of 4 to 5 months, and all of these people have committed a sexual offence. Now, all of the offences will be different. Some will have committed offences against children, some against adults, some will be internet offences. And the reason that we mix them all up into one group is so there is no collusion between people who have committed a certain type of offence. We don't treat rapists as better than people who have offended against children or internet offenders, because each sexual offence has created victims and has destroyed lives, no matter who the offence is against. So it's really important there is no hierarchy.
On Charlie Unit, one of the first prisoners I meet is Mike, whose name has been changed, as have all the other prisoners I interview in this programme. Mike is a lifer who has spent most of his adult life in prison. How long have you been here as a prisoner in Whatton?
7 years here.
You've been 7 years here in Whatton?
I was 6 years on A2 and about 14 months up here.
Can you tell us what the offence was?
I raped a 38-year-old woman in their own home. I got life sentence with an 8-year tariff.
So after 8 years you could have been released, but you haven't been.
Yeah. I think it depends on your behaviour when you're in the prison.
I mean, you're much more than 8 years over tariff. How do you account for that?
Probably my behaviour when I first came into jail. You're a young guy, you're doing life in prison, you think you're Jack the Lad. So you team up with the so-called gangsters in the jail. I get them the wrong type of crowd.
So when you come into Whatton, you've been here 7 years. What has it been like?
You feel a lot safer. If you're in a so-called normal prison, you have to hide your crime from certain people because certain people don't like it. I mean, I don't like it myself, but I have to live with what I've done. But when you come here, you have nothing to hide from anybody. Everybody knows that everybody else is a sex offender, so people just get on with the time.
But you've been on treatment programmes?
Yeah, quite a few.
So you've had to deal with child sex offenders, who are considered in other normal jails as the lowest of the low.
Yeah.
What were your own attitudes towards?
I never liked them. I thought it's the lowest crime you can commit. But when I turn around and look at the crime that I've committed, it's against an adult. It doesn't matter. The thought process is still the same. I've offended against another person sexually, whether it's an adult or a child. People stick that label nonce on a rapist or a child sex offender. It's all the same as far as people are concerned. And you have to live it. You have to move on with it.
So in these 7 years, how have you changed? Have you changed?
As you get older, you do more courses, you look back at your life and you think, well, what a waste. What have I done with my life? I've done nothing. And I come here, I think I've changed a lot in the years.
So what's the difference then in this place compared to others that's changed you?
Nobody judges you. No one at all, not even the staff. They don't look upon you as scum.
Yeah.
It makes a big difference.
What are your thoughts now, though, about the crime you committed?
I wish I could go back and change it, I really do. My victim has to live with it every single day, so do I. I wake up every morning thinking, I've done it, get on with my life.
When you think, I've done it, you mean, I've committed this thing, this is why...
Crime, yeah, it's still part of me, it will always be there. It will never, ever go away. But I hope I never have to be that person again. I mean, I was a nasty piece of work, a very nasty piece of work. Didn't like myself, didn't like anybody else. If I wanted something, I just went out and took it, irrespective of the consequences.
Do you think that led to the rape? That you were taking supreme advantage, or was there personal stuff?
That was my main intention.
Yeah.
Because she was a vulnerable woman.
Yeah.
My main intention was to go over and rape her. That's what was in my head at that particular time.
Yeah.
I was in my mate's flat. We'd been drinking for about 4 or 5 days, and we'd been smoking dope, taking pills. I said, I'm going over to see you. He went, no, don't go. And I said, yes, I'm going. I had that decision to make at that particular time, and I said, I'm going over. All I had to do was say no.
Yeah.
That will always be part of me. I've always got to keep that there. Because if I don't keep it there, and I forget about him, he might creep up on me.
Do you think it might?
I think he might, yeah. He's always there. The potential will always be there.
Yeah.
Because I've done it before, I could do it again. And I have to see the situations that I could get in to avoid them. And I think that's what the programmes do here.
Yeah.
But when you look back on it, I can still see her face, I can still see the fear there. And that fear will always be with her, that fear will always be with me as well. So I don't want anybody to ever be in that situation ever again.
It was extraordinary to hear Mike tell me about the precise moment he decided to carry out the rape, to devastate his victim's life, and which led him to spend nearly 3 decades in jail. So what drives sex offenders such as Mike to commit such appalling crimes? Dave Potter again.
Each individual will have certain decisions, certain beliefs on their what we call path to offending, which gets them closer to offending. Now, a lot of people could start out on the path to offending but never actually get to creating a victim and having a sexual offence. They may stop, they may think of the consequences, they may find a relationship that satisfies them, they may just suddenly think, you know what, this is wrong. And for whatever reason, people that have committed a sexual offence don't have that stop button, or they miss the warning signs that they are getting close to offending, or it's just something that they really, really think they need to do. And what we do at Whatton is to try and get them to understand, especially the harm done to others, harm done to themselves, and ways of identifying that warning sign when they get out that they are on the path to offending again. You can't cure people of a sexual attraction to children.
You can't?
No.
It's there.
It's there, and it will be there forever. If someone has a sexual preference for violence, that may be there forever. What we give them are the tools to cope with those risky thoughts, those risky feelings, so they know the harm done, so they know ways that they can keep themselves and other people safe.
Whatton offers a number of treatment programs. There's a core one, where prisoners start to explore the reasons why their offences occurred. Then there's an extended program that goes even further. Other courses include a healthy sex program, which deals with unhealthy sexual thoughts. There's Resolve for anger management, and even a specialist program for the deaf. Most are for groups of up to 9 inmates, but there are also one-to-one sessions as well. I've just been following a group of prisoners who are going in for one of the treatment programs here. They happen to have learning difficulties, but we can't go in. We can't actually record the process of treatment and discussion that goes on because of reasons of confidentiality and of the therapeutic process. I would have liked the opportunity to have sat in and listened to one of these sessions, but I had to accept it wasn't possible. There are over 50 members of staff carrying out these programs all year round, the majority for child sex offenders.
In a group, it's really important they feel safe in that room, because they will be talking about the deepest, darkest, most horrendous things that they may never have told anybody, ever. Imagine sitting in a room of people you've never met and being asked, so what's your darkest, deepest sexual fantasy? Nothing is taboo, nothing is forbidden. Tell me now. And you haven't even offended. And these guys have committed a sexual offence, and we ask them to be that open and honest. So we have to engender this safe atmosphere. What happens in this room stays in this room within limits. It's a very protective environment, and they know they can say anything in that room, and there'll be no judgment. They won't be pilloried. They'll be talked through and helped through. Okay? We've had group members scream and shout at us, call us all the names under the sun, storm out, but we just work with that. That is just a consequence of their thoughts and feelings. You can't take things personally as a facilitator. You really can't. You wouldn't last 2 minutes. And they understand, actually, yeah, these guys are trying to help me.
The next prisoner I meet is Bill, a lifer of 22 years who's been in Whatton for 6 months. He's done many sex offender treatment programs in other prisons. Can I just ask, what were you convicted for?
I was convicted of buggery and indecent assault on a male, on a boy.
On a boy?
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you classified as a paedophile?
Yeah.
A sexual interest in children, essentially that?
Yeah, I had a sexual interest in children.
that interest was always there, even as a young person?
Yeah, I'm a great believer in who we grow up to be. Basically starts from our birth and how we're programmed. A lot of things happened in my childhood, I think, that helped me develop into what I became. And we're talking about sexual abuse, physical abuse, all the way through. Emotion really wasn't there in the family. You're sent to private school, there's no emotion there, so you have no emotion attachments at all. Then when you're growing up as a child then, and other men, paedophiles, come and then, I don't know whether they identify you or whatever, but you leave yourself open, and they give you that emotion. And what happened is with me then, I actually liked it. Grooming you, whatever better term you want. And because you've never learned the social skills to socialise with adults, I found then that I wasn't rejected by children, nobody hated me. And also, there's an element of control, because I could control the situation as well.
Yeah.
Sex offending is a very self-centred thing, it's a very selfish thing. It's all about you, it's not about other people. The thing is with the courses is that if you go in there with a closed mind, you're not going to get anything from them. I wanted answers, but I didn't know how to find them. I looked at the offence, I looked at all the decisions between it. What went wrong? You know? Bear in mind, I've been married, I've had a family.
Really?
Yeah.
But why did you need experts on a prison programme to tell you that? Why couldn't you discover that yourself? After your first offence, or even your second offence?
You might ask that, but you don't. You just don't. It needed something to say, hold it, here
so
it is.
So the emotional needs were such, you had to carry on.
Yeah.
A tough question for you.
Yeah.
Do you think you're capable of doing such an offence again?
No.
You don't?
No. I couldn't. For me to do that again, I couldn't do it. You know, it's just not there. I'm probably warmest emotionally now than I've ever been in my life. And that'll hopefully continue to develop even more.
Lots of people suffer something like that, but they don't go on to commit offences against children.
No,
and you
did.
did.
You look at the number of people who commit offences or who suffer childhood abuse. Some go on to alcohol abuse. Some go on to drugs. Some just cannot hold a permanent relationship. But it damages you in some way. This is just an element of the way it's come out. Some people go on a combination of drugs and sex offending. Some go on drugs and alcohol. Some commit suicide. Don't tell me that everyone who suffered from childhood abuse, it doesn't come out in some way or other, because it does.
Bill represents a familiar story, victim turned perpetrator. He may accept the label of paedophile, but there are many others in Whatton who would reject it. I'm told some even find it offensive. Lynn Saunders tells me around 1 to 2% of the general population could be classified as paedophiles. But defining a child sex offender with that term remains complex.
The sort of definition of people who are paedophiles is that they are sexually interested in children. And I think that's sometimes quite different to people who have opportunistic interest in children. That's not necessarily about sexual gratification. It could be, but it depends. It could be for other reasons. And that might not necessarily be their sexual preference. It just happens to be who's available for their sexual gratification.
Well, we'll go on to that wing, shall we? I continue my tour with the governor.
Which is mainly for people who are elderly and people who have disabilities, for the most
In this
part.
unit,
And we have
I meet
palliative
Steve,
care.
one of the orderlies looking after old and sick inmates in Whatton. Steve is much younger than Mike and Bill, and has only come into the prison recently. Is it the first time you've been in prison?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
He tells me who he committed his offence against. Can I ask what you were convicted for?
Yes, it was against my stepdaughter.
Really?
Yes.
I ask him what life is like in Whatton.
For me personally, this is a hell for me every single day. I mean, we talk about remorse and guilt and the shame I feel for what I've done. Not only to my victim, but to my family and to my wider community. And everything that I was doing beforehand is all gone. I've got nothing. I don't even have the proverbial pot to pee in anymore. The loss is just overwhelming and constant every day. I was just trying to, I suppose, make things better by working a lot, making sure everybody had everything they wanted. And then my stepdaughter decided to go to my wife and then to the police, and then it's all sort of now come out. It's a bombshell that you know it was going to go off at some point. I always knew that.
Was there a moment where you could have stopped, where you could have not done that? How do we learn from this?
There's no excuse for what I did, but a situation I was in, very serious financial pressures, issues at home, personally between myself and my wife at the time, and I took it out on the one person I was meant to protect and love and care for. And people have no idea how hard that is to come to terms with. They really don't.
Of course. I fully understand. And, you know, I'm grateful to you for sharing that with us. I can't think of anything worse than having to deal with that for the rest of your life.
Absolutely.
But you have hope that you can get through this?
To be fair, I'll be honest, last sort of 2 or 3 weeks, I've been very down.
Which is why you started to cry now?
Self-ill all the time. It's not far from under the surface, if I was honest. I didn't have a bad childhood. I had a mum and a dad, and they were great, and they both worked, and we had, you know, I'm not a drug addict, I'm not an alcoholic. I don't think I have a mental illness. I don't know, where is the answer? You know, almost like you're trying to find something to blame, and that doesn't feel right either.
You accept full responsibility.
Absolutely.
You knew what you were doing.
Absolutely.
And you paid the price for it. And
yeah.
Your victim has paid an even bigger price.
Absolutely.
Steve's story is typical of so many prisoners in Whatton, as most sex offences are not committed by strangers, but by family members in the home or people who are known to the victim. I was moved at the time by the pain and despair that Steve revealed to me. But on reflection, I was troubled that I was so sympathetic to a man who had abused his stepdaughter. But I realise this is the point of Whatton, to deal humanely with people that most would find it impossible to empathise with. Lynn Saunders again.
We're dealing with people here. We're not dealing with monsters. We're dealing with someone's father, someone's son, someone's brother, someone's neighbour, someone's uncle. We're dealing with people. When you talk to people about that and say, how would you want those people dealt with? What would you like to happen to them? How would you want to stop these guys doing something bad again? They actually have surprisingly compassionate responses. We deal with some very damaged people who have been the victims of all kinds of things, whether it be the care system or mental ill health or learning disability, or simply just poor life choices.
What's the lady doing in there? Surveying, observing?
She's observing the route. We allow prisoners free movement. They can roam around.
One of my guides around Whatton is Alan Beasley. He's not a prison officer, but a non-operational manager.
The officers in the cabin.
He was listening to Steve with me, and then as we continued to our next location in the prison, told me an extraordinary story.
The other week, I was in the textiles workshop, and an alarm went, but I came out and there's a prisoner hanging himself from the bars. So, being as I was the only one there at the time, I went down and had to support him because I'm not a uniform member of staff. I'm not allowed a suicide knife, a fish knife, so I couldn't cut the ligature. So I had no option other than to keep him suspended and stop him hanging himself. So somebody came down to cut him down.
So he survived that prison?
Yes, he did. Yeah.
So are there suicide attempts?
Yeah, there are. Yeah, there are. There's people
who can't cope with the sentence.
Yeah, people who suffer with self-harm. I mean, his was particularly bad. He'd slashed all his face and his head with a razor, but he was also on the risk of staff register. He threatened to slash staff up. And I think if I'd have known he'd got the razor, and I might have acted a bit different.
Fortunately, we've had no suicides in the time I've been here, but I think that's sometimes fortuitous because we had many occasions when people could have easily killed themselves, but we managed to save them by intervening quickly. I wouldn't like to put numbers on that, but not infrequently. There is a significant problem of self-harm, sometimes of a very serious nature, and again that suggests quite a lot about kind of emotional turmoil that people are in, and they sometimes struggle to come to terms with what they've done.
I've been told that these deeply negative emotions are a huge barrier to the treatment process. But it seems to me there's a paradox. On the one hand, we want sex offenders to be profoundly remorseful about their crimes. But the process of rehabilitation here demands they get beyond that. Karen Thorne is HMP Whatton's head of psychology.
I think one of the key things for us is trying to work with individuals to see them in a very balanced way and to try and reflect where their strengths lie and recognising that they have had other successes, they have personal qualities, characteristics. I think where there's high levels of guilt and shame, that can sometimes get in the way of using those key strengths that are going to take them away from offending in the future because they're debilitated by them.
But we would want people to feel shame and guilt, wouldn't we? for what they've done.
We want people to understand what was wrong, so what we want them to do is be able to learn from that experience and not repeat it, and helping them find a way of maintaining an identity that they are comfortable with, a sense of self that they are comfortable with, so that they can go on and do constructive work in treatment.
What the public don't understand is the work that we do here. I think the public think that once a sex offender, always a sex offender.
Dave Potter.
Every time I talk about this, I do a lot of staff training, and people sometimes find this hard to get their head around. In groups, a lot of the work we do is aimed at building the self-esteem of people that have committed a sexual offence, because a lot of sexual offending is as a direct result of low self-esteem, especially against children, because they don't judge. They have no experience of sex, they have no experience of adult things, so people can feel more comfortable with children. In groups, what we will try and do is build their sense of self-worth.
Again, I feel this is another part of the paradox, essentially making sex offenders feel better about themselves in order to return back to society as better functioning human beings. Another more radical strategy that Whatton has been piloting for the last 5 years is drug therapy. Anti-libidinal medication, or SSRIs, which are antidepressants, are being given to a selected group of prisoners to help deal with their obsessive sexual thoughts and reduce their libido. Karen Thorne again.
The guys who take the medication often report that it provides them with more headspace. It gives them an opportunity to think about other things in their lives. And that can often be quite helpful when they are going through the psychological therapies, because if they're quite sexually preoccupied, often the fact we're in a room talking about sex and sexual fantasies, and not uncommonly with some female facilitators in there, that can be quite distracting for them. So for those men where they are having trouble thinking about anything other than sex, they often find that taking the SSRIs can really improve their engagement in a treatment programme.
I meet Dan, one of the prisoners on the anti-libidinal programme. He tells me how the medication has helped him with his anger and sexual frustration.
For the last 18 years, I've been very nasty. I've committed loads of offences, and I've just been out of control since my mid-teens till when I was about 30. And then someone suggested about medication.
What effect has the drug had on you? I mean, was it noticeable as soon as you had your first injection?
No, it took about a year, the change of effects. Like I don't really think about sex that much now. I don't masturbate as much now. Maybe once a month I do it now, whereas before I was doing it about 8 or 9 times a day. I was very, very angry, I was violent, I hated the way I felt about women. It was just unbearable. If I wasn't on this medication, I can guarantee I would most probably never be able to get out. I didn't care about the programmes when I first started them way back in 2002, but now I've done 2 courses, I was able to be more truthful to myself. When I see a member of staff now, I'm able to just talk to her respectfully and appropriately. I used to talk to their breasts all the time instead of their faces. I don't do that anymore. I've been in care most of my life, and when I was in secure units, prisons, and they've always tried to help me, but I've always just thrown it back in their face that I didn't want to know. And
why do you think you did that? Why didn't you want to know?
Because I just didn't care. I didn't care about what anyone wanted. I didn't care what they felt. But now I'm on this medication, and I feel more calm in myself, more relaxed. I still think about sex, and when I do think about it, I don't think about it in a violent way. I just want to make sure I don't hurt any women ever again. I've hurt too many women in my life.
So is anti-libidinal medication that seems to have helped Dan so much the future? I'm told the evidence for it is very positive, but in this country, unlike the US for instance, it remains a voluntary decision.
I'm going to talk to you in your cell.
Wherever, I do not mind.
The last prisoner I meet is Ian.
It's wherever they want you to go.
Let's go and ask.
Who is a programme support volunteer, which means he helps other prisoners when they come into Whatton for the first time. Can I ask what your offence was?
My offence was rape, but oral rape, not intercourse rape.
Was that your first offence, or was it a number of offences?
No, that was just the one offence, and I have an offence from 40 years ago.
Historic
offence, which was against a female of, I think she was 14.
So you came to HMP Whatton from another jail?
From another prison, yeah.
Yeah. And what's the role you've undertaken here?
As the programme support volunteer.
What does that mean, a programme support volunteer?
When we get new prisoners come into the prison, they go onto one of the wings, and throughout the first week that they're here, they're shown around the prison, but also they do an afternoon for induction onto programmes.
Do you have the impression that a lot of these prisoners coming into the jail have no idea why they've committed the offence they've done?
I would probably say so, yes. Yeah. The prisoners that I've spoken to, I don't know the exact figures, but I would probably have to say that 60% of the people that I have spoken to have themselves been sexually abused as a child.
60%?
That's just my personal opinion. I shouldn't think there's ever been a poll done of it, but that is just from the people I've spoken to. 6 out of 10 people have been sexually abused themselves as a child, including me. But I don't hold with this just because I was sexually abused. That's what made me sexually abuse somebody.
You don't?
No, I don't. No.
You don't think it was a factor?
A factor maybe, but it didn't make me do it. I did it.
And you knew you were doing it?
I knew that I was doing it. I knew it was wrong, but I still did it. And that's what the programmes that we do try and show you where you went wrong, what you should have done in those situations, so that next time, if you get yourself in those situations, it won't happen again.
But you haven't been on the programme yet?
I've done the core programme.
You've done the core programme?
I've done the core programme, yeah. I mean, me personally, I've been sat here 4.5 years waiting to do my course.
4.5 years?
4.5 years, yeah.
Why is it still taking so long?
That's something I don't really know.
Unlike Bill, whom we heard earlier, who says there is a link between the abuse he suffered and his own offending against children, I'm struck by how Ian refuses to blame his past for his crime. But I asked the Governor, Lynn Saunders, why is he waiting so long to get on a course that will aid his release?
We've got serious resource issues because we've got potentially 841 people here who need a programme, and the resources that we have to deliver programmes are considerably less than that. So we have to prioritise people according to when they're due for release, when they're reaching parole, or how far beyond their tariff. But we haven't got any choice because we don't have the resources to put that right.
But, you know, it seems to me extraordinary waste of money and time to have a man waiting 5 years to get on a programme to help him get rehabilitated and stop, frankly, costing the rest of us a lot of money.
Yeah, I agree.
But you haven't got the money from headquarters.
It seems to me that there's too much short-termism in this because, as you say, we could save an awful lot of money by getting people progressed through their sentence more quickly and therefore released, so thereby saving the £27,000 a year it takes to lock somebody up in this place, times however many years they are waiting on their programme.
But all this costs money, doesn't it?
Well, yes.
And there are people out there saying, why are you spending time and money on these men? They're evil and they don't deserve it. That's the sort of public attitudes you get, I think.
I don't believe in evil. What's the alternative? I think for me it's important to make sure that we keep people safe. This is about a public protection issue. And some of these guys will not ever get out, but most of them will. So if somebody's living next door to you and we haven't done everything possibly we can to make sure that you or your family or your children or your grandchildren are safe, then we're not doing our job properly, and that's what our job is, to keep people safe.
Do you want to just run through then, just to make sure that I'm sure that you know exactly what you're doing? Because the last thing I want you to do is to go out and breach your licence and come back. Okay, so this is the last...
In reception, Prison Officer Carol Aitchison runs through the licence conditions for a prisoner who is about to be released.
State your address, approved by supervisor and officer. Undertake only such work including voluntary work. Not travel outside the UK unless you have been given permission to do this by your supervisor and officer.
As Lynn said, most of Whatton's inmates will go back into the community, but she tells me their reoffending rate is surprisingly very low.
Not to use or access any computer or device which is internet enabled.
6% compared to around 50% for the general prison population. I've been impressed during my time here by the staff's determination to treat their prisoners with humanity, which they believe is crucial.
That's it, so good luck on leaving.
Thank you.
And
this is
don't
this is
back.
it. Yeah, I won't be.
Okay.
Thank you, though.
All right then. Good luck, mate.
But I know the fear around sex offenders is always likely to remain. Around men who rape and abuse a woman or a man, a child or a teenager. Violations which continue to break taboos that are so profound to us all. Most people listening will be concerned about risk. You're helping rehabilitate sex offenders, you hope. Nevertheless, most of them will go out into the community.
Yes.
How sure are we that they won't reoffend? That you're not sending someone who's going to take my child, who's going to abuse this person?
There are never any guarantees, of course. With the work that we do, I profoundly believe that we give them the tools to help manage their risks. Group members will say, I know I'm never going to offend again. In itself, that is risky. It's that complacency that, well, I know what I did, so it will never happen again. They will have a plan for the future with all of their risk factors on them. It may be feeling lonely, it may be feeling depressed, it may be drinking, it may be sexual thoughts when you see a child on a television, and they will have tactics in place as soon as that happens to hopefully nip it in the bud, talk to someone to challenge that sexual thinking. You're quite right, there is no guarantee that they won't offend, but I'm damn sure that if we don't do anything with them, that we don't offer them any help, then what's to stop them reoffending? If they go out with the stigma, sex offender, I'm just a piece of crap, I'm no good, I'm worthless, why not reoffend? They've nothing to lose.
Right, so we're going in, they've got to ID you again, same thing again, and then I'll come out, the other gate open, and you just cool.
Inside the Sex Offenders Prison was presented by Rex Bloomstein, who co-produced the programme with Simon Jacobs. It was a unique production for BBC Radio 4.